Today we'll report on the accessibility issue in motorsports. Anything to be done about it? Big news from sports car racing. Porsche is coming back to the 24 Hours of Le Mans and Daytona. We'll have all the details. And Bubba Wallace, the significance of its sponsors for 2021 in NASCAR, right here on GRID Tonight.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to GRID Tonight, your weekly motorsports news program. I'm Kobe Lambert from the Podium Finish.net, and with me, as always, and tonight we'll report on the racing accessibility problem, Bubba Wallace's 2021 sponsorship at Racing, Porsche returning to the 24 Hours of Le Mans with the LMDH program in the year 2023, and we're going to start off with news that broke early this morning in Europe with AlphaTauri.
Early this morning in Europe, of course, it was around the time where most Americans were asleep, but it's definitely big news for the motorsports world. AlphaTauri has been well known for a while that Pierre Gasly will return back to AlphaTauri in 2021. Now we know the identity of his teammate. Formula 2 driver Yuki Tsunoda will receive a promotion to Formula 1. Tsunoda will be the first full-time Japanese Formula 1 driver since 2014. Kamui Kobayashi was last that driver. In 2019, another Japanese driver got a free practice with the AlphaTauri at Suzuka during the Japanese Grand Prix. It was Super GT and Super Former champion Naoki Yamamoto. Now, Tsunoda is getting an opportunity of a lifetime to represent AlphaTauri, Honda, and his home country of Japan. His finished third in the Formula 2 point standing, Kobe. Based on what you saw in Formula 2 this year, is Yuki ready for Formula 1?
Oh, yes, I definitely think Yuki Tsunoda is ready for Formula 1. He's really progressed fast through the ranks in the last few years. And in Formula 2 this year, he started off strong, and he had a few races where things just didn't go right for him. But for the most part, Yuki Tsunoda was really strong, and he showed why Red Bull, AlphaTauri, and Honda have a lot of faith in him. As you mentioned, he finished third in the Formula 2 point standings, and as a Red Bull and Honda junior driver, he was really the next in line to go to Formula 1, and it's certainly going to be interesting to see how he performs next season alongside Pierre Gasly. But definitely, Yuki Tsunoda has a lot of potential to be a solid Formula 1 driver over time.
I would agree with Yuki Tsunoda. Going to have a lot of potential in this, and of course, the excitement, especially with Japan having a driver in Formula 1. We know lately Takuma Sato has been a huge star there, especially with his win at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Indy 500. But definitely, this is going to be a big deal, and especially when Formula 1 comes back to Suzuka for the Japanese Grand Prix. It's going to be really huge for the home crowd to cheer him on. Now, of course, with him coming to AlphaTauri, it means Daniel Kvyat will be out of F1 again. Kvyat pretty much saw the writing on the wall a little early on. A few weeks ago, he told Autosport that he already started to explore his option outside of Formula 1. Also, mentioned the possibility of taking sabbatical if he cannot find anything for 2021. A few days ago, he told Formula1.com that he is open to being a reserve driver with a desire to return to Formula 1 in 2020 and be on the grid, and especially when the new regulations arrive. Do you think Kvyat will return in 2022, or do we see the last of him in Formula 1?
To be honest with you, Joe, I don't really see a place where Danny Kvyat could be right now, because we've known for a while that he was going to lose his seat at AlphaTauri, and it seemed like Yuki Tsunoda was going to be the driver to take his place, and it turns out Yuki Tsunoda is the driver taking Kvyat's place, and he did mention the fact that he'd be open to being a reserve driver, and he's already exploring options outside of Formula 1. I'm wondering what those options could be. Could we see Danny Kvyat go to the United States and race in the IndyCar series? It's too late to claim a Formula E seat. And maybe we could get a reserve role there. I don't know, or even explore endurance racing. Either World Endurance Championship or even IMSA. Yes, the very last minute now to find a ride in IMSA, but there's still enough time to get a deal done, even if it's just for the Rolex 24 or the Enduros, and still plenty of time to get a World Endurance Championship schedule going on, because we still have several months before that championship kicks off. But as of 2020, 2021 next season, I don't really see a spot for Danny Kvyat on the grid unless he's a reserve and test driver for someone. And as far as coming back in 2022, I'm not so sure. I mean, there's always a possibility because there'll be some seats open, but I have a feeling we might have seen the last of Danny Kvyat in Formula One.
Very likely Formula One. There's only 20 seats there. Very competitive. If he could get a role as a reserve driver, I think that'd be really great for him. Of course, 2021, we're still coming on a racing season with the pandemic going on. You never know. Could be the next Nico Hulkenberg, a super sub. But definitely, he has the options there. Reserve driver for Formula One, looking to sports car racing. I could see him. Maybe he could figure out something in the IndyCar series. There's still some time for dad, some rides as well. But definitely a lot of options out there. Is it the last of him in Formula One? That's going to be really hard to tell. Especially, we'll see how everything goes in the 2021 season. Definitely 2022. That is the big year for Formula One and all the changes that it's going to bring into that season for Formula One.
Yeah, Yeah, definitely. 2022 going to be a big year for Formula One, but winding back to 2021 is going to be a big year for Bubba Wallace in 2311 Racing, co-owned by NASCAR Cup driver Denny Hamlin and NBA legend Michael Jordan. And on Monday morning, 2311 Racing announced the primary sponsor for Bubba Wallace's number 23 Toyota Camry, and the sponsorship lineup features some familiar, new, and returning businesses to NASCAR. And some of those sponsors are DoorDash, McDonald's, Columbia Sportswear, Dr. Pepper making its return, and Root Insurance making its NASCAR debut. And look, and when you're looking at all of these sponsors, DoorDash is already sponsored by Wallace when it's a 43 car. We've seen McDonald's as well continue its presence. Columbia signed on during the 2020 season. And ironically, we've seen Dr. Pepper on a number 23 Toyota Camry before. It sponsored Alex Bowman when he was at BK Racing several years ago. So it's definitely going to be strange seeing that again. And then Root Insurance. I remember they put out that sponsorship a video when they announced that they would be with Bubba Wallace during 2020 season. That was really powerful, talking about how they were going to be tackling all of the issues in our country, like systematic racism and all of that. Yeah, so definitely Bubba Wallace has quite a range of sponsors joining him next season. How solid is the sponsorship lineup, and what peace of mind does it bring to a new team to the Cup Series?
This is a very great group of sponsors. DoorDash, of course, they're definitely, when it comes to apps on telephones, smartphones, and home deliveries, they are one of the bigger names out there. And of course, with everything going on with the pandemic, they've been seeing a big increase. But then you look at McDonald's. They've been around motorsports for quite some time. Yes, they've exited a couple times, but to have them there, I feel they're going to be a solid, safe pick. They're not just going to leave after 1 year. And then, of course, Columbia Sportswear, brand new to motorsports. They came in here, but definitely they've seen their target audience when it comes to outdoors, fishing. And this is really exciting because they are a very solid company that, as well, in the past where we've seen other companies come in, have problems paying up sponsorship commitment fees to the teams, leave the sport. With Columbia, McDonald's, DoorDash, as well as Dr. Pepper and Root Insurance, I don't see that being an issue. So really, this allows the team, Bubba Wallace, focus on what they got to do on the racetrack. Live up to their sponsorship commitments, whether that's PR appearances here and there. But definitely, they don't have to worry about looking for a sponsor for 2022.
Yeah, and it's really unheard of to have a new team like this come into the Cup Series and have all of these major sponsors hop on board. I mean, we just listed DoorDash, very popular. McDonald's, very popular always. Columbia Sportswear, a lot of people buy Columbia products, including myself. And Dr. Pepper, been around for obviously a long time. People love Dr. Pepper and Root Insurance. Personally, before this, I've actually never heard of them, but it's gonna be interesting learning more about Root Insurance and everything they stand for. But it's really good to see this in today's day and age in NASCAR, when just racing in general, where it's so hard to attract all of these sponsors and to get full funding for the entire season. And I remember when 2311 racing was just starting up, and they were talking about how they were having to turn away sponsors, and that's honestly unheard of in today's age of NASCAR and motor racing. It's usually a struggle to try to fill up an entire schedule, but Bubba Wallace, 2311 Racing, Denny Hamlin, Michael Jordan, all of them are going to be able to focus on trying to build their team next season and won't have to worry about sponsorship. And I have a strong feeling that they won't have to worry about sponsorship at all for the foreseeable future. And this week, Bubba Wallace did say that he wants to become a household name and that there are no excuses anymore for not performing and going for wins. And as we all know, no disrespect to a Richard Petty Motorsports, but they just did not have the car capable of being competitive and go out and winning races. And with 2311 Racing, all of the ingredients have been put into place where Bubba Wallace can have the equipment to go up there and compete for solid finishes, compete for a spot in the playoffs, and all of that in the NASCAR Cup Series. So that really why he said that there's no more excuses for him not performing and being competitive, going out front for wins and potentially championships. And we know since Bubba Wallace started being vocal about issues regarding racism in our society, he's really become quite a recognizable name, not only in NASCAR but really outside of the sport as well. It's kind of in a way it's kind of like when you ask a random person on the street who who's not investing in NASCAR, if you said name a NASCAR driver, they'd be like Jeff Gordon, Dale Earnhardt Jr., or Jimmy Johnson, Tony Stewart, those guys. And now, if I ask somebody about can they name a NASCAR driver, they're more likely to say Bubba Wallace now because when Bubba Wallace stood up for what he believed was right, it really helped him become such a recognizable name outside of NASCAR. And now you can have random people on the street who know who Bubba Wallace is. And last Thursday, Adam Stern from the Sports Business Journal reported on the fastest growing brands among millennials and Gen Z. And the poll was conducted by Morning Consultants. And here were some interesting notables that we picked up on with Gen Z, ages 18 to 23. DoorDash, one of Bubba Wallace's main sponsors, was ranked fourth among the group Gen Z. And to my surprise, and I'm sure to a lot of other people's surprise as well, NASCAR was ranked ninth on the list. I'm like, are you for real? NASCAR is ninth among Gen Z. That's incredible to see. NASCAR is attracting new fans, and in a sport that's been on the decline in recent years with people turning away from the sport. Seeing a new generation of fans coming in, that's definitely got to be exciting for all of the executives working at NASCAR. And and Bo Wallace sponsored by DoorDash, and obviously he's a NASCAR driver. How big would it be to have a driver that Gen Z can relate to in comparison to a driver that isn't sponsored by a brand that has a presence with Gen Z or millennials?
It is huge for Bubba Wallace, for NASCAR. Because here's the thing, DoorDash, and including some of the companies that we don't see their demographic, like Columbia and all that, now they got a driver that's in NASCAR that they can market to a crowd that is not familiar with NASCAR. So this is really exciting because Bubba Wallace, through his sponsorship of DoorDash, you could see the DoorDash race car on the DoorDash app. That's exposing NASCAR to potential new fans. Columbia Sportswear, they're based in Portland, Oregon. They do mostly sportswear, outdoors wear. I don't think before 2020 we would think about them and NASCAR. This is going to give more fans the opportunity to come in. Not only that, but also some of those other tech companies as well. Of course, DoorDash and tech company, they're based in Palo Alto, California. California is a huge television market. Palo Alto, Silicon Valley, all that. To have some NASCAR presence there through DoorDash, that'll be really huge. Bubba Wallace is going to be the face of the DoorDash car. That's going to be really huge. And then, of course, let's not forget Square Cash App, which was sponsored this year for Bubba Wallace in the RPM car. They're based in San Francisco. A lot of younger people are using those apps. And these companies that have the younger people, they have something there with Bubba Wallace that could bring them to NASCAR to cheer for the DoorDash car, the Cash App car, the Columbia car. So this is really huge. And definitely when it comes to some of the other sponsors that we've seen that are not on those lists, it makes it where this is the golden opportunity for NASCAR to try to get those essential sponsors from that list to invest in NASCAR. And I think that's going to be a big win for everyone But definitely Bubba Wallace can be one of the first drivers to pioneer that through DoorDash and some of the other companies.
Yeah, it's a big deal for NASCAR to partner with those popular brands that we talked about, and I really think that can take the sport to the next level in terms of attracting new fans from a different demographic. And one last question before we get to the next topic: has Bubba Wallace potentially opened the door for more of these popular brands to look into NASCAR or other forms of motorsports?
Yes, he has, and not only Bubba Wallace, but I feel especially NASCAR, with their response post-pandemic, addressing the racism after the George Floyd murder in Minnesota. A lot of Gen Z people, they've started turning to NASCAR. Some of the in that list from Adam Stern, there were in total 33 popular brands on that list. Only 2 were on that list and were involved in NASCAR, and they were not part of Bubba Wallace's sponsorship plan for 2021. TikTok, of course, they were in the Xfinity Series with Ryan Vargas in the number 6, and Coca-Cola Zero Sugar, of course, they sponsor the summer race at Daytona. So definitely, NASCAR is probably looking at these companies. How could we get them involved? Companies like Zoom, HBO streaming services. And I feel Bubba Wallace, if he could really succeed with the DoorDash, the Columbia Sportswear, we're seeing new diverse fans coming in. NASCAR is going to start talking to those sponsors, popular brands. The teams, they're going to start approaching those popular brands. I mean, DoorDash biggest competition, Uber Eats. I could see a competing team trying to approach Uber Eats, tell them, hey, let's go out there, beat the DoorDash car. This is really good for the sport, and I think definitely Bubba Wallace could be one of the first to help break down that barrier to get some of these newer sponsors in motorsports.
Yeah, definitely. I think this can open up the door a lot more. And as I mentioned, it's really crazy thinking that this brand new team at the Cup Series is prepared to be very successful right from the start of the Daytona 500. And another thing that I wanted to point out, not regarding the sponsorship situation, I think people need to be realistic when looking at 2311 Racing and Bubba Wallace for the 2021 season, because although they're going to have all this funding coming in from sponsors and every race is going to be funded, they're still a new team. And yes, they have the TRD Toyota in alliance with Joe Gibbs Racing. That's going to help as well. But like I mentioned, it's a new team. You need to give them time to gel and build everything up. The Daytona 500 is coming soon, believe it or not. We're halfway through the month of December. Then it's going to be January, and then February we're going to be ready for the Great American Race. So Daytona is almost right around the corner, and the team's going to be working hard with the time they have left to try to make sure they have everything ready to go so they can start off the season on a high note. And I'm sure they're definitely going to have a lot of great moments throughout the season, and then there's going to be moments where there's going to be growing pains, and that's the thing with any new team. So even though the equipment's going to be a lot better than anything that Bubba Wallace has driven at the Cup level, I think people need to be mindful that 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 you can't really expect this team to go out there and win the Daytona 500 from race one and be in contention to win the championship and to win races all throughout the season. Since this is year one, I'm going to be generous and say I think it would be a really good season if Bubba Wallace either makes the playoffs or finishes between 17th and 20th. So Joe, I know I said I had one more question on this subject, but I promise this time it is the last question. I want to know, in your opinion, what would be the most reasonable expectations for Bubba Wallace and 2311 racing this in the 2021 season?
Easily a playoff appearance, excuse me, will be a good start. In the playoffs, we know, especially in this era where we've seen drivers like Harvick, Denny Hamlin just dominate, win multiple races, being consistent will get you in the playoff. We saw that with Aric Almirola this year, especially when he had his string of top 5 and top 10 finishes. If they get in the playoffs, that is a really good season for a first-year team. I see the potential for a win, particularly after restrictor plate races. That's a big one. And of course, the short tracks, that's always a good equalizer. You don't have the disadvantage of handling. So if they get one win, that is huge for a first year team, first year organization. We're not talking about expansion, like for example, when Robert Yates Racing expanded from one car to two cars, and Dale Jarrett won the Daytona 500. We're talking brand new team, new owners, new everything. One win in their first season will be huge, but definitely the playoff appearance will be a big win for 23XI Racing.
Yeah, I definitely think making the playoffs will definitely be a huge victory for that entire organization, and I think that they'll be in contention to win some races next season. Yeah, making the playoffs, first year team, that's a huge deal. In year two, can go out and try to go out there and get some more. Yeah, so definitely we're gonna be watching 23XI Racing in 2021, and everyone else will as well. And last night we had some big news drop in regards to 2023 with Porsche announcing an LMDH program. Yeah, yeah, and yesterday Porsche dropped that major news regarding their future plans in sports car racing, with Porsche returning to top flight prototype racing in 2023 since ending its LMP1 program several years ago. And and they didn't announce what chassis they'll use between Orica, Ligier, and Dallara Multimatic, and that's going to be coming soon. And also with the new prototype formula arriving, and they'll be able to choose. They were able to choose between Le Mans Hypercar, LMH, and LMDH, Le Mans Daytona H. And obviously, Porsche decided to build an LMDH prototype that will be eligible to compete in the FIA World Endurance Championship and the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship, going for overall victories. They'll be able to put a car on a plane and go to events such as the Rolex 24 at Daytona, the Mobil 1 12 Hours of Sebring, the 24 Hours of Le Mans, and the Motul Petit Le Mans. And the German manufacturer joins other confirmed programs such as Toyota building a Le Mans hypercar. Earlier today, saw a spy picture of the car, and it looked really interesting. And Toyota next month, they're going to officially unveil their hypercar, and so definitely a lot of excitement about that. And Audi recently announced they're going to be building an LMDH, and Peugeot making a return to prototype racing as well, building a Le Mans hypercar. And assuming they'll all run at least two cars at Le Mans, that's 8 prototypes already. Plus, it is known that multiple manufacturers have been evaluating the next set of prototype formula, such as Acura is one of those manufacturers, and no word yet on General Motors, Cadillac, and Mazda from IMSA. Based on what has already been announced, do you think we could be entering a new golden era of prototype racing?
Yes, it does look like we're going to be entering a new golden era of prototype racing. You can see the excitement all over social media, the fans. 24 Hours Le Mans is going to be a huge race. We're not talking about 2, maybe 3 teams competing for the win, multiple teams. This is exciting. And definitely, it just seems that the LMDH program and the combination of EC, IMSA working together, so where a team could just load up the car, go across the world globally, anywhere where they are racing and participate, that is already paying off big dividends with these huge announcements that have been coming out, getting people really excited for sports car racing.
And I think it's certainly interesting that Porsche wants to have cars in both WEC and IMSA. And looking at the IMSA side of things, 2 potential teams immediately come to mind, and those teams are Core Autosport and Team Penske, which just finished up their partnership with Acura. And most recently, Core Autosport concluded the factory GTLM Porsche program that the team was in charge of running on behalf of the manufacturer in North America. So there's definitely a most recent strong relationship there. And next year, Core Autosport is going to be running an LMP3 program. And before Team Penske partnered with Acura, they actually used to represent Porsche in the days of the American Le Mans Series. Do you think these 2 teams could be in contention to run the IMSA program due to the previous relationship with Porsche?
I do see that potential, and that was one of the first things I thought of right away when this announcement came out was Penske. I don't see Penske just going to sit on the sideline. I see them wanting to get in. And of course, with Porsche in there, and especially at that 24-hour Daytona, if we have Ganassi there racing, Penske Ganassi, that's going to be really exciting. And I think that's just part of the potential. Besides these manufacturers, we might start seeing some of the big teams, Penske, Ganassi, who knows, maybe on Radio All Sports, other teams coming in. And I think it's just going to be really exciting for the sports cars in 2023, especially the 24 hours of Le Mans.
Yeah, the 2023 24 Hours of Le Mans is going to be really exciting. Already have multiple manufacturers committed to the new prototype formula, and I'm sure we're going to have more as well because we still have the IMSA manufacturers and DPI right now. They haven't announced anything. It seems like Acura is moving in that direction, and we're still waiting to see what's going to happen with Cadillac and Mazda as well. But definitely still a lot of interest out there. And 2023, hopefully I'm still around to see it. But I think the 24 Hours of Le Mans and the Rolex 24 at Daytona is certainly going to be an exciting time for sports car fans. And as I mentioned, one of the manufacturers already committed to LMDH, which, which is Audi. By returning to prototype racing, Audi decided to drop its factory Formula E program, and BMW is also planning to pull out of Formula E. And BMW is one manufacturer that's always been keeping an eye on the latest trends in sports car racing. And we've talked about the uncertainty in the Formula E paddock since the news about Audi and BMW broke. And and Porsche, they're a Formula E manufacturer too. Like Audi, they're going prototype racing with the LMDH formula. With Porsche's newly announced LMDH program arriving in a few years, should this be worrisome for Formula E fans wondering about Porsche's long-term commitment to the electric racing series?
Does have to be very worrisome, especially after we saw Audi, BMW left BMW saying, we've done the most we could in Formula E in developing electric technology. Porsche said, oh, they're committed to it, but we got to be honest. Racing is a business. They're going to do what's best for their business. If that means putting more in LMDH, trying to find more funds, it could be very real that the Formula E team is sacrificed. The drivers over at Formula E, of course, they could go run the sports cars with Porsche. So if I was Formula E, I would be very nervous, especially everything going on. The discussion of the third gen car coming up. So far, still Mahindra is one of the only teams who signed up for that. I would be very concerned, and I think maybe this news could a little bit be of a wake-up call for Formula E that we can't just be stagnant and saying everything's good here, people want to be in, because clearly now this news of LMDH and all this news is showing that the focus is starting to turn to sports car racing, and that might be a big contention coming up for Formula E.
Yeah, definitely. I know we've talked about in our previous programs that Formula E is going to have to figure out who they are as a series. Like I said in the past, I think Formula E is going through an identity crisis right now. It's definitely huge losing Audi and BMW, and with Porsche now going to LMDH, it's definitely kind of worrisome. Are we going to see Porsche continue in Formula E for years to come? And the jury is still out on that. And if I'm Formula E, I'm definitely worried. And you did bring up a good point that racing is a business first. If Porsche sees a greater benefit in focusing all of their efforts on LMDH and pulling out Formula E, and if that's the best course of action for the company, then I'm sure that's exactly what they'll do. Or maybe they'll decide to stay in prototype racing and do Formula E at the same time, and that'll be great for Formula E. But like you mentioned, this is a problem that Formula E has to address and figure everything out moving forward. And if they ignore this situation, it kind of reminds me of that little meme with the dog with everything on fire saying this is fine when it's really not.
Last week, the troubling news involving Nikita Mazepin brought negative light to Formula One as it wrapped up the 2020 racing season. A season that many saw on shaky grounds, especially in the start with the pandemic, but delivered great races throughout the season. We saw the Real Race as One campaign introduced to address racism. But unfortunately, everyone is asking the question after the Mazepin incident. Are we seeing the 20 best drivers in the world on the grid, or the 20 most funded drivers in the world? It is no secret that motorsports is one of the most expensive sports to break in. Compared to basketball, baseball, and soccer, football globally, the initial costs are high. Any child can go into a field or basketball court at a nearby park or school and own their skills. For motorsports, racetracks are more likely located outside major cities due to zoning ordinances. The cost of safety equipment and a competitive vehicle, whether it's a kart or a stock car, ranges into thousands of dollars. This leaves video games and computer simulators as an alternative for young potential racers to get track time. But a sophisticated simulator system can still run very high costs. The accessibility problem leaves racers more dependent on sponsorship to cover the costs. This is an issue at every level of motorsports, from the local dirt track or karting track to the pinnacle of motorsports, Formula One. Formula One has a history of drivers bringing additional fundings to the teams. The return of a Schumacher back in Formula One means we'll see a familiar sponsor returning back. Deutsche Vermögensverwaltung, a financial service based out of Germany, of course, it has a long history of sponsoring the Schumacher family. Banco Nacional was a major financial supporter of Ayrton Senna during his Formula One career. In 1971, Raiffeisen, a bank based in Austria, jumped on the opportunity to sponsor Niki Lauda during his Formula One career and has since sponsored many Austrian athletes. But before that sponsorship, Niki Lauda borrowed money against his life insurance to succeed and secure a ride in Formula 2, risking it all. Of course, this all led to his career in Formula 1. Most drivers have the skills and experience to earn major financial support early on in their career to progress up the motorsports ladder. But not all racers have that luxury. The most notable is Lewis Hamilton. It is well known that his father, Anthony Hamilton, worked 4 jobs and sacrificed everything to get Lewis in karting, often with less competitive equipment. But Lewis's skills and talents allow him to drive, race, and climb up that ladder. Now, Lewis Hamilton has deals with Bose, Sony, Tommy Hilfiger, and Monster Energy, and is one of the most influential racers in the world. But even in Formula One, drivers are still always trying to secure sponsorship. In 2019, Decra, a longtime sponsor of Nico Hulkenberg, dropped him, and after 2019, Nico was unable to secure a full-time ride. However, lately, drivers with personal sponsors are starting to struggle against racers that have financially backed connections through families or connections that are more powerful than just a personal sponsor. Sergio Perez earned his first win in Formula One in 2020, has a financial backing from Mexican-based corporations, but lost out on 2 potential rides. Racing Point went with Vettel over Perez for his seat. The former Formula One champion brings a lot of experience and the clout after being with Ferrari and winning multiple world championships. Teammate Lance Stroll, coming off his career best season, is the son of Lawrence Stroll, the head of the team ownership and consortium, which paved the way for Lance's racing career. This relationship had led many fans to criticize Lance Stroll for not earning his spot, but his racing resume shows he has the speed and talent to be in Formula One. That criticism is similar to Nicholas Latifi, who again has personal backing from family businesses. For Williams, a team in the back, the additional funds are necessary to keep going and improving the car. But the Nikita Mazepin controversy has become the lightning rod. A driver connected with personal backing and a reputation many question about his role in Formula One. The incident last week brought up the questions: are teams now in a compromised role, where sponsorship money is more important than the caliber of the racer? The cost of motorsports and the economic uncertainty has made financial sponsorship more critical than before. Series like IndyCar, NASCAR, and other series are trying to reduce the cost for teams, bring more parity, and create a program to include the drivers that may not have the accessibility to sponsorship opportunities. W Series, NASCAR Drive for Diversity, and the FIA Women in Motorsport Commission are examples of programs to give underrepresented groups of drivers a platform to show their potential. Kobe, could fans be turned off to Formula One if they don't feel the grid is representative of the 20 best drivers in the world?
Well, that's certainly an interesting question right there, Joe. I mean, I think in definitely during my lifetime of watching Formula One, I don't think we've always had the best 20 drivers on the grid, and I don't think we'll have the 20 best on the grid in the future as well. We've definitely had some of the best drivers in the world currently on the grid in Formula One, like Lewis Hamilton for starters, and others definitely might be questionable. And as we all know, racing is a pay to play business, and and if and if you don't have the and if a driver doesn't have the cash to race, then someone else will. Well, we saw this with Nikita Mazepin, and Nikita's father, Dmitry Mazepin, is a billionaire. He owns this chemical company in Moscow, Russia, and Haas Formula One team. Since I parted ways with Rich Energy, they've really needed to get some significant funding to help move that program to the front, because remember Haas was running strong in the midfield, and now that's kind of like dropped back out of the midfield just in front of Williams. So Haas needs that funding from Mazepin, and while a lot of people really believe that the hot seat should have went to someone like Callum Ilott, who was the runner-up in the FIA Formula Two World Championship, unfortunately, Ilott he's not going to be racing in Formula One next year. So Nikita Mazepin got the call. We've seen some flashes of brilliance from Mazepin on the track, but in all honesty, it's just everything off the track that's really that's really the detrimental factor right there for Nikita Mazepin, because we all know the story where in the video of Mazepin groping this woman, and the story's really developed, especially within the last day or so. We're gonna report a little bit more on that on our Saturday Grid Live news program, but going back to the sponsorship stuff, if like I said, if a driver does not have the money to go out there and fund the program all the time, then they're gonna go out and find a driver who brings sponsorship. And by having Mazepin come into the program, they can afford to have a talent like Mick Schumacher, who who doesn't bring the same type of funds as Nikita Mazepin.
Yeah, that's the big thing. All these drivers in Formula One, of course, they have earned their super license. There is a system where you do get a super license through racing Formula 2, Formula 3, and you get your way to Formula 1. One of the big things, of course, is having that personal backing really aids you get there. So even though these are all skilled drivers that have been there, various levels of personal sponsor privilege have gotten their route to Formula One easier or harder for them. Now, definitely one of the big things, of course, we talked about Formula One, where people have question spots on the grid for drivers. There's also some of that in other series. We know in the past, Milka Duno and IndyCar with backing from Citgo, the Venezuelan oil petroleum company, John West Townley with backing from Zaxby Chicken in the NASCAR Truck and Xfinity series. And recently, a little bit of an opposite, Oliver Askew was released by McLaren SP Racing. Got headlines, of course, especially after his concussion injury. But one of the big things, Oliver Askew does not have sponsorship to offer a new team. So he is currently outside looking in. Should sponsorship recruiting be a role of the driver or solely for the teams? Is there anything that could be done about this?
Unfortunately, Joe, I don't really think anything can be done about this unless somebody comes up with the magic bullet to end the pay to play thing. But unfortunately, now, in the past and well into the future, I think this is just going to be where we are. And I do remember the days where like the team owner had the sponsorship, and then they could just plug in any driver they wanted. Now roles are reversed. Now we need to have the driver who's coming in to bring the sponsorship. And with in the McLaren situation, with Oliver Askew, that was actually really interesting because Askew wasn't he didn't have the type of funding that would require a seat like that. But McLaren, they bring in a lot of money, so McLaren can afford to put in anyone in the seat that they want to. And Askew's former teammate at Arrow McLaren SP, Pato O'Ward, signed on to race with Arrow McLaren SP. Pato O'Ward was struggling to find a spot in the IndyCar grid because he didn't have the funding to race a full season. I think he ran part time with Carlin before he tried to go to Formula One. Ended up competing in Formula Two at Austria and Super Formula as well. And then the Formula One dream was dead, and he had come back here to the United States to race for Arrow McLaren SP. and although Award didn't have the personal funding, McLaren had the funding. So, yeah, so they could put any driver they want in the car, and Pato Award is definitely showing what he can do. And maybe by his performance in IndyCar, Pato Award can attract some personal sponsorships for himself. So if he were to depart Arrow McLaren SP in the future, he would have some funding for a team that's asking for money. And so when I'm looking at wishful thinking, you'd think it would be the responsibility, of the team have to have the sponsorship in place, and they can just hire any talented driver they want to fill the spot. But as we've seen it in today's society, it's really been the role of the driver to rally up all the sponsorship themselves, then take it to the teams that they want to drive for.
Yeah, really the role of the driver, and one of the big things, of course, when it comes to the driver, this is something that we see often in the local levels where drivers want to start a career, if they don't have a connection to a family business, a friend that owns an auto shop, dealership, it almost seems to imply that the driver, they want to start racing, they have to reach out to businesses, not teams set it up looking for potential drivers. With that said, is there a way that local tracks, whether it's dirt tracks or karting tracks, can make the racing more accessible for potential racers that want to dip their toes in racing and not sacrifice so much personal funds for entering motorsports?
I think it would be really helpful to have a system in place, kind of like what they have with the Indy Light Scholarship, where you get a certain amount of money, and you'll be guaranteed a spot in IndyCar the following season. And I believe several races. I think it's the season opener at St. Pete, the Indianapolis Road Course race, and the Indy 500, obviously, and the season finale as well. So I think you're at least guaranteed 4 races, and definitely, if nothing else, the Indy 500 the following year. So the Indy Lights scholarship, I think that would work well in other series as well. But when you're looking at the local levels, whether it's dirt, karting, or even if you go to like the late models, super late models, stuff like that, if if you were able to receive like a scholarship for coming up the ranks, and like be guaranteed to compete in this race at this higher level of racing, I think that could definitely help in a way, help them advance to another level, because we've seen a lot of people talk about this before, where you had this kid who's winning all these late model races on Saturday night, but nobody on the NASCAR level gets to see what he can do because he simply doesn't have the funding. It if this, but speaking hypothetically here, if we have this driver who's just going all across the southeast and winning all of these super late model races, and I think he's the next star in stock car racing, but it's like a family owned team, and they've given up a lot of things to go to the track, but they can only afford to race at local short tracks, and can't really pay to go big time NASCAR racing. If there was like certain scholarships in place where you receive a significant amount of funding for winning these races, for if you meet a certain criteria, then I definitely think it could help these drivers get to the next level, and get in the type of equipment they need to be successful, and then through their talents maybe attract a sponsor for themselves. Then they can go keep moving up the ladder system and hopefully make it to the Cup Series. But I know it's definitely easier said than done.
Easier said than done, and it is just really hard because it is at the more local level where you could easily get the younger drivers, upcoming potential drivers, vested in motorsports. If they don't have the access to the funds or the knowledge, or even a network of family or friends involved in motorsports, it just makes it really hard. The challenges of a track far away. I mean, definitely it'll be something where we'll love to see short tracks make business agreements to provide some opportunities. But if there was an easy solution, I feel that would have already been introduced somewhere down the road. But definitely, it's going to be something where for upcoming racers, if there's a way to make racing more accessible, that is something I think everyone will support, because we definitely want motorsports to continue to grow and bring in new fans and new drivers.
Yeah, definitely want motorsports to continue to grow and wanted to be able to attract more people. And that's a real shame that we have some young kids out there turning up in the junior categories, and at your local tracks, but they never get their big break to go race a NASCAR race. And also want to emphasize that if you don't have any interest in going to the bigger levels and you just want to stay in short track racing and all of that, or wherever you're deciding to race, it's perfectly okay. And I think in NASCAR we've talked about drivers who have become what we call lifers in the Truck Series or the Xfinity Series. And look at the Truck Series, the lifers I can think of, like right off the top of my head, Matt Craft and Johnny Slaughter. Those guys have been truck drivers for the most part, and when they've gone up to race at other levels, it hasn't really been that great for them. But they're finding lots of success in the Truck Series, and also the Xfinity Series. They have guys like Michael Annett, Justin Allgaier. Those are two guys I think too when it comes to lifers in Xfinity Series. Maybe you consider that Ryan Sieg, Jeremy Clements as well, and you don't have to be in the Cup Series at all. But yeah, it's great to see all the talent come through. But it's not. But you can still be so successful driver and not go to the Cup Series. Yeah, and hopefully in the future we can find a way to make this problem that's currently plaguing the accessibility to be able to progress your career. I hope we can find a way to make it a lot easier for these drivers to race in a series that they feel like they're capable of being most competitive in. And next, we're going to look at the GRID World Motorsport League. And our colleague Matt White has been counting down the top 100 finishers in the GRID World Motorsport League on the Twitter handle at grid_WML. Be sure to look out for your favorite drivers and riders. And as we document on a Sunday's GRID Live post-race show, World Endurance Championship and European Le Mans Series LMP2 champion Phil Hansen snuck in at the last possible moment to snatch the title away from Lewis Hamilton, outscoring the Formula One world champion by 0.02 points. The 2021 GRID World Motorsport League is scheduled to kick off in March 2021. Be sure to follow GRID World Motorsport League on the Twitter handle at grid_WML. Now it's time to finish up with some quick takes.
Dalton Kellett's 2021 plans were revealed. In 2020, Indy Light graduate Dalton Kellett ran a partial schedule with AJ Floyd Racing in the NTT IndyCar Series. 2021, the schedule will get a little bit busier. AJ Floyd Racing announced that Kellett will drive the number 4 Chevrolet full-time next year. His teammate will be Sebastian Bourdais in the number 14 Chevrolet IndyCar.
Of course, is entering a Ferrari 488 GT3 in the GTD class for next month's Rolex 24 Daytona. Nicholas Nielsen, Daniel Serra, Matteo Cressoni, and Simon Mann will complete the lineup. And FIA World Endurance Championship LMGT-AM team TF Sport is planning to enter the Rolex 24 with an Aston Martin Vantage GT3. The British racing team will fight for GTD class honors with Charlie Eastwood, Maxwell Root, Richard Westbrook, and Ben Keaton are set to share the Aston Martin in the twice around the clock Florida endurance class. And speaking of Ben Keaton, he'll be pulling double duty at the Rolex 24 once again. Keaton is going to be competing for class victories in GTD and LMP2, both pro-am classes. And he's going to be joining PR1 Matheson Motorsports' LMP2 lineup consisting of Scott Huffaker, Mikkel Jensen, and Nico Lapierre.
Arthur Leclerc is going to Formula 3. Scuderia Ferrari's Formula 1 driver, Charles Leclerc, of course, has accomplished a lot in his racing career, progressing through the junior categories, winning races and championships. Now, he's with Ferrari. His little brother getting his own path in racing paved. The 20-year-old Arthur Leclerc, he will compete for the Formula 3 championship next year with Prima, the same team that claimed the 2017 title with Charles Leclerc.
Formula 2 championship runner-up Callum Ilott won't return to Formula 2 next year, but he'll serve as a test driver for Scuderia Ferrari in F1. And no word if Ilott will participate in other racing programs outside of his commitments with Ferrari and Formula 1. And since the drama surrounding Nikita Mazepin's surface, many have said that Ilott should be in the second Haas F1 car next season, alongside Mick Schumacher, not Mazepin. And a lot of people really think Ilott got snubbed from a full-time Formula 1 drive in 2021.
Definitely a lot of people are thinking that. Of course, we encourage all our viewers, comment in the comment section. We'd love to hear from you, your thoughts on everything that we reported today. We'd also want to encourage everyone to visit one of our fighting sponsors, Publis. In the video description, there is a link, 10% discount on our purchases from Publis, from dog collars, dog clothing, and dog accessories. And of course, 10% of all your purchases goes toward helping dogs that are in need of housing, medical, and their well-being. Of course, this is a very near and dear cause to our heart. We do have Kiska, our office dog, as well. She is right now with me in the room, so every once in a while you see me giving her a little treat here and there just to keep her occupied while we record. And of course, we want to thank Colin, our Patreon. We encourage everyone to visit our Patreon page, Invest in the Grid. 2021, we got a full year of covering motorsports, reporting on the big news. So definitely want you to be part of our Patreon, help us grow, and help us bring some more racing coverage. Tomorrow, Grid Girls, a very special program. We'll be talking about the women in Extreme E, since that is a unique format where each driver, 2 drivers, 1 male, 1 female. Saturday, we are on the air with Grid Live News. Myself, Kobe, will be reporting the latest news occurring from the day we record here up to Saturday. So definitely encourage everyone to please subscribe to our YouTube channel, give a like to our videos, and comment. We enjoy reading your comments and responding back. For Kobe Lamb at the Podium Finish, I'm Joe Samaniego. Thank you for watching and have a wonderful day. Joe Samaniego here. Want to invite you to go check out Poblis. Poblis is a dog clothing and accessory company based in Austria. 10% of each of your purchases goes to helping dogs in need, whether it's homeless, sick, or ill dogs. This is one of the reasons why we support it. Kiska here is a rescue dog from rural Alaska and our Grid office dog. We care about our furry buddies, and we know you do as well. Definitely check out poblis.com. There's a link on the video description, and by clicking on that link, you get a 10% discount on your purchase as well.